Kevin Rogers with you here on the Vegas Insider YouTube channel, joined by Stephanie Otey, and to break down, unfortunately, the passing of Dwayne Haskins, former Ohio State quarterback, most recently with the Pittsburgh Steelers, just 24 years old, and he passed away in Fort Lauderdale, Florida on Saturday, and Stephanie covered Ohio State for several years, so she's got a lot of good insight on the Buckeyes program and Haskins, who had a huge year at 18 as a starting quarterback at Ohio State. As far as what memories do you have, people you talked to, what have they said about the passing of Dwayne Haskins?
Yeah, the influx of messages and stories shared over the past few days has been overwhelming. It was all the good things about Dwayne. There was so much to love about him. Everyone talks about his infectious smile. Ryan Day was just speaking about how he had an old soul. I mean, he was just someone that cared a lot about other people. He's that buddy on the team. I know there's some small things that stood out, like Johnny Dixon, for example. Remember, Dwayne would always have a pack of Oreos for him, or Ryan Day would always say, because he would always wonder, like, for one game, I remember they're playing Rutgers, was like his second game. The rain was coming down, and he goes up to the hotel and says, it's going to be raining. And Dwayne goes, no, it's okay. And as a coach, he says, when your quarterback tells you that, you feel very confident. And the most profound one that was circulating a lot that just really, really tugs at your heartstrings, and I can relate to it so much, is being a kid going and visiting Ohio State campus, the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, the Horseshoe, and having a dream to be on that field. I have a dream to be a reporter there, and he wanted to play quarterback. Troy Smith was his favorite quarterback. He went on to have a record-breaking season with the Buckeyes, but to be a child and say, I want to play here. This is my school. I'm going to go to college here. I'm going to play quarterback here. And to go and do it better than anyone before him was really the thing that stood out the most. The game, the rivalry, the way he showed up when JT Barrett went out, and he went in there when they were down 20-14. He goes back and beats their rival in Ann Arbor. He goes back and puts up 6 touchdowns the following year against Michigan. And he really turned the offensive around too. I mean, he really wanted to prove to the world he can do more than just throw, because his recruiting story was very profound, and he had an arm like no one other. And at Ohio State, you had Braxton Miller, you had JT Barrett, and it was, they had a strong run game, and they had a dynamic quarterback. And so he wanted to show, I can run too. And he went out there and he had a really big game. And we saw that against Maryland in his hometown with his community around him. And he just really wanted to show the world. And I think the saddest thing is that as I go back and look at some of the interviews that took place, like Terry McLaurin came back to visit the Horseshoe on game day, and I talked to him. It was his first year in the NFL. He was drafted to the same team, Washington, along with Dwayne Haskins, and he was continuously catching throws from his quarterback, Dwayne Haskins, like they did at Ohio State, and now they do it in the pros. And he said they entered there attached at the hip. They really relied on each other. It's hard to do that in the league, and they just continued that bond that they had. So I know Terry's having a tough time. But another interview that stood out was when Dwayne Haskins had a setback in Washington, and he didn't have the starting spot. He was benched, and I talked to Urban Meyer, the coach that recruited him and saw his talent, and I said, what was your reaction to that? And he said, Dwayne Haskins just needs more time. Urban Meyer had the thorough belief that he could be a franchise quarterback, just give him time and he could develop, because he didn't have a career yet. He still had time more in college, and he got in there so early. It was a first-round pick, and it's hard to grow up that fast. He was doing it in the eyes of the world, and Urban Meyer said all he needed was time. And so as I listened to that interview on the day that he passed, just at 24 years old, it was really hard to hear that all he needed was time, and that's what was taken away from him. But really what stands out is the way he was as a teammate, as a brother. He was so close to his sister, Tamia. His family was amazing. He was raised right. He had a really good family. They were so supportive of him. So there's a lot of people hurting. There was a vigil at Ohio State, just a lot of people in pain, losing such great life too early, far too early.
Yeah, the one part, Stephanie, that was really tough, at least on a professional side, is that, like you said, he was drafted by Washington. He was from Maryland, so he's going back home in a sense to play there. he didn't start immediately. Case Keenum was in front of him, and it's just not easy to be a rookie quarterback, and then you're not starting the season, so now you're getting thrown in, your team's not as good, you're going to struggle, but then the fault's going to go on you because you're not doing well when really the team maybe isn't that great. He goes to Pittsburgh to try to like resurrect his career even as a backup. We never saw that come to fruition, which was very unfortunate.
Yeah, and he went there. It all happened in Florida, and you see the quarterbacks that he's competing against, Mason Rudolph, Mitch Trubinsky, they invite him out there. He was staying with them in a house. He got out there early to train, and he was really on the right path. And he was just so young, and he had so much more time ahead of him. Like, we didn't see his best stuff in the league. I mean, we saw him have one of the most successful careers in college football altogether, the best in the Big Ten. But in college, he got in there early, and he had setbacks like many players do, but he was so determined, and he was very strong in his faith as well. I think he really relied on that, and he was really on the way forward, and his teammates believed in him. I know that's a great dynamic he has, especially with his receivers, is that they really trust him. He put that confidence in them. And to see him be welcomed by the Steelers so much, like, it was a very different experience than in Washington. We saw Mike Tomlin speak about how he came in immediately and was welcomed. He felt right at home. Like, he was one of the family there. And the way that they invited him out to train with him, like, he was competing for the same job with a couple of these guys, and they invited him out there. They were buddies, they were more than teammates. And so to see that come up short was just the most tragic part about it all, because he really was getting his life, he was coming into his own. He got married. He was making efforts to be the guy, and he did it in a way that even his competitors, the guys that were fighting for the same spot as him, wanted him out there with them. He's that guy that everyone just loves to be around. He really did have an infectious smile. You always see him joking with the buddies, and even when he was a backup or whatever spot he had on the team, he was that teammate that everybody wanted to be around. And there's so many teammates that are struggling right now, and it was because of how great he was to be around.